Hi, my name is Lesley Simpson. I'm delighted to be presenting this award for Jewish thought and culture as a PhD candidate here at the Kashitsky Center for Jewish Studies to women who have been my professors and mentors. This category, Jewish thought and culture, represents a book that is an intellectual game changer. H.G. Adler is known for having created what is called in German a Gesamtkunstwerk, translated loosely to mean a total work of art that makes use of many forms in an aesthetic synthesis. For those of us who have been introduced to the depth and breadth with H.G. Adler, life, literature, legacy, it's almost incomprehensible to realize his work is only now reaching an English-speaking audience. We owe a debt of gratitude to editors Julia Creet, Sara Horowitz, Amira Bojadzija-Dan, as well as the other essay authors for giving us their own Gesamtkunstwerk, a multi-layered, multifaceted aesthetic synthesis of the literature, language, history, philosophy, psychology, and visual imagery that encompasses Adler's contribution to Holocaust studies. Please join me in welcoming our winners.
Yes. Thank you very, very much for this award, which means, I can't tell you what it means to us. It's unusual. Sarah's video, yes. Our third, Sara Horowitz, is joining us by video, so perhaps we should start with Sara. But let me just say that it's unusual for a collection of essays to be given an award like this, because it's dense going for the jurors, and it was a dense project, and it's just, well, I'll say a little bit more about the difficulty of the project after we hear from Sara.
Thank you so much for this important award. I very much regret that I'm not there to accept it in person, but my co-editors, Julia Creet and Amira Dan, certainly are. I'm honored by the Canadian Jewish Literary Awards recognition of our book, which is also, really importantly, a belated recognition of the amazing body of work that H.G. Adler left behind for us. I want to express my appreciation to the jury of the Canadian Jewish Literary Awards. The awards nourish Jewish literature and culture in Canada in so many important ways.
As some of the other recipients have said, there were motivating people in their lives who were the reasons that they ended up writing about the subjects that they wrote about. In my case, it was my graduate students. And it's one of the great joys of being a supervisor is that sometimes things come to you through your students that you would have never otherwise approached. In this case, the first graduate student was an editor at Random House. He had been previously a graduate student who wrote to me and he said, I have a book that we're about to publish in translation that I think you might be interested in. May I send it to you? I said, well, yes, certainly. And he sent it to me, and I read the first few pages, and I thought, oh my goodness, what is this? Who is this? It was the first few pages of the translation of the journey. which had just been published, translated by Peter Filkins. And Peter Filkins had sent the proposal to 40 publishers, in some ways echoing Adler's own roadblocks with translations. And finally, it was, I'm very proud to say, Paul Taunton at Doubleday, who recognized that it was a book that absolutely should be translated and should have been translated many years ago. Adler's difficulties began immediately after the war. He was a survivor of Theresienstadt who returned to Prague. There was no one left for him, but he made a commitment when he was in Theresienstadt. He said, if I survive this, I will write about this. I will write about this experience in every genre that I can. And indeed he did. The only thing he never wrote was a memoir, but all of his work is autobiographical in a sense. But one of the reasons he had such difficulty was particularly with the novels, although his historical work was much more successful. The novels were modernist allegories. And in the 1950s and 60s, certainly nobody, and certainly not in Germany, because he was writing in German, nobody wanted to publish allegories about the Holocaust. So one of the reasons that he remained unknown for so long was that he was living, he went to England shortly after the war in 1948. And so he was living in England, writing in German, but he was also writing somewhat unreadable books. And certainly unreadable in the sense of how we understand Holocaust literature as testimony. It was in no way direct testimony. And so he had great difficulty finding an audience, and in particular, finding an English audience. He died in 1988. And one of the few sort of literary mentions of him prior to the translation was an extensive homage in Sebald's Austerlitz. And so Adler came to us really through another fiction. And so he was a kind of fictional figure before he became a historical figure and before he finally emerged full-blown as a literary figure. So now all three of the trilogy, The Journey, Panorama, and The Wall, have been translated. And I think that Hage Adler is set to become, as Sara puts it in our volume, the great undiscovered gem of the late Holocaust literature, I suppose we could put it this way. My other debt of gratitude goes to Amira Bojadzia-Dan, who was one of my graduate students at the time when we discovered Adler together, really. And it was through Amira's interest, but also through Amira and Michael Dan's support that we were able to bring together the finest Adler scholars in the world to York, to a symposium, out of which our collection emerged. And we know that we have, as the editors of the first collection of essays dedicated to Hage Adler, we know that we have created a foundational book of scholarship about Adler, and one that will be, I think, a work of reference for generations to come. So thank you very much, and thank you to Amira and Michael, and to my collaborator, Sara, as well, and of course, to the committee.
I would like to thank the Canadian Jewish Literary Awards. Thank you. As Julia said, books like ours do not often get, considered for an award such as this very important award that we just received. I would like to thank you, my co-editors and friends, Julia Creet, Sara Horowitz, my family, and our fine contributors who worked so very hard to help us pull together this volume. Thank you.